Welcome back. Next, we're going to update our code to include local storage so that our jokes are saved to the window object in local storage, and then we can fetch them out later when the page loads for the first time. So if you're not super familiar with local storage, let me just show you how it works really quickly. So in the window object, let me make this larger. Ooh boy. Okay, so inside of the window object, there's a property called local storage. Right now, there's nothing in it. It's an object. But we can add data into it like this, window.localstorage.set item, and then we give it a key, like let's say color, and then a value, purple. Now, if I refresh my page, even if I do a hard refresh, if I look at window.localstorage.get item, color, I get purple back. So it is saved in there. The only issue that we're going to run into is that in order to store something in local storage, we can only store strings. So we need to take our jokes and convert them to strings, but there's a really easy way of doing that, json.stringify. So let's go back over here to when we are first loading our jokes. Here we're getting 10 new jokes, and then we are pushing them into the jokes array and then setting state with the jokes. Afterwards, let's update the window object, window.localstorage.set item, and then we're going to set the key as jokes, and then the value is json.stringify, and what will we save? The jokes array. And if we save this code now, we refresh our page. So I just refreshed the page, and if we look at window.localstorage, we should now see jokes in here, and you can see how they're stored. It's this massive string that contains an array with objects. It's JSON, but then we can parse JSON in order to get it back. So right now we're storing it, all our jokes in there every time we refresh the page, but we're not grabbing them out. We're not using them. So we got to update our code a little bit. Our logic should really look more like this. If there are no jokes inside of local storage, then get 10 new jokes. If there are jokes in local storage, just use those until the user presses the button to get more. So in our constructor, we don't want jokes just to be an empty array every time. Instead, we want it to use the existing jokes if there are any. Otherwise, it should be an empty array, and then we'll load more jokes. So we're going to need to use json.parse in order to get the data from local storage, which is a string, and turn it into a JavaScript object or an array containing objects. So we're going to set this.state equals jokes is set to json.parse window.localstorage.get item of jokes, and that's going to give us the jokes. But if there's nothing there, what do we want jokes to be set to? We want it to be an empty array, and this is sort of a hacky way of doing this if I save here, but we're saying json.parse either whatever you get in the local storage under jokes, and if you don't find anything, then parse this string, which is just going to turn into an empty array at the end of the day. So json.parse takes a string. This is just a one-line way of saying get this from local storage, otherwise parse this, which is an empty array. Okay, so if we go to the app and I refresh the page, I'll do it in just a moment, you'll see that our old jokes, the ones we currently see, will linger for a moment, but then we're overwriting them. So watch the word hippopotamus. It stays and then it disappears after the loading finishes. So what's happening is that we're starting out with all the jokes from local storage in the state, but then we hit component mount and we're immediately starting to request new jokes and overwriting the old jokes. So we want to have some logic in here that says if there are jokes, or let's do it the other way around. If there are no jokes, so if this.state.jokes.length is 0, so if jokes is empty, then get new jokes. But I'm going to move all of this to be a new method just to keep this clean. Also, we're going to reuse that method once we add the button event handler so you can load new jokes. So I'm going to call this get jokes and make it an async function. And then this one does not need to be an async function, component mount. And then all we do instead of component mount is check is jokes empty. If it is, call this.getJokes. So this way we're not overriding the existing jokes in local storage every time we refresh the page. So now, if we refresh, the first one says kleptomaniacs, I'm refreshing, it still says kleptomaniacs. We're not loading any new jokes at all. And that's fine. If I clear my local storage, and the way we can do that is window.localstorage.clear, and then I refresh the page, we're now going to fetch 10 new jokes that we haven't seen. Well, we've possibly seen them before, but it won't be the same 10 that we have in local storage, or that we used to have before we just deleted it. So now we get 10 new jokes. All right, so that's adding in local storage. Next, in the next video, we're going to work on getting this button to load 10 new jokes. Instead of replacing these 10, we're going to add them into the existing jokes in local storage.